Welcome to another episode, an installment of Spiritual Awakening with yours truly, Dr. A.J. Green Sr. Welcome. Glad to have you on tonight. Family, you know what to do. Tag and share and tag. Tag and share and tag. We want to bring as many people as we can into this discussion on tonight. And this is a special edition, Politics Beyond Belief. That's going to be our discussion tonight. Powerful group that I'm getting ready to release, to share and disseminate all kinds of information. Tag and share and tag. Almighty, we thank you for this opportunity. Bless, empower, strengthen, let the truth be disseminated with clarity and context. And we give you praise and glory in Yeshua's name, his power, his way, his consciousness. It is so, and so it is. Thank you. Invite people in, tag and share and tag and share and tag. I see numbers fluctuating. I'm going to give a few more people an opportunity to come in. Good evening, Grand Rising. If it's the morning, no matter what time of day it is to you, God bless you, Vivian. Good evening to you. Therapist Cotton, good evening to you. That's right. Speak as you come into this digital assembly or even this spiritual and subconscious assembly. Come on in, make yourself at home. And again, don't come by yourself. Invite some other people to join us here on this particular night. And we've got people watching us, of course, on Facebook and YouTube. We're going to get to your questions in just a few minutes. I always like to remind you that you're the offspring of an omnipotent, divine, powerful being. You're not powerless, you are powerful. And so I want you to type in the comment section, I am powerful. Come on, type it in the comment section. I am powerful. Now to him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. Life is lived from the inside out. We are a powerful species, divine species. And so I want you to own the power that you are, own the power that you possess by typing in the comment section, I am powerful. Feel the power, speak the power, declare the power. Recognize the power, own the power, think it not strange that you are who and what you are, for the Almighty has designed you with these abilities. And again, I'm so excited and delighted to be with you tonight. We have a special subject, a special topic with special guests that we're going to be dealing with in just a few minutes. And yes, we're going to be discussing some things that's going on in this latest election cycle. Presidential election is right around the corner. And I want to do what I could as a citizen to make sure that you're presented with various different sides, various different pieces of information that's going to be beneficial to you going forward. I never tell people, and I haven't done this for years as a spiritual leader, who to vote for. Of course, I may passionately discuss my disagreement with particular candidates. I would definitely do that, but it is ultimately up to you to decide who you're going to vote for. And I think that these panelists that we have who are coming on tonight are very qualified to be able to discuss and have some dialogue about the candidates, about the issues, and of course, how it might impact you. So you've tagged, you've shared, and make sure after you've tagged and shared that you type in the comment section, I tagged or I shared. And we also want you to take this same link and text it to people. Text it to people that you know, They can watch us on their phone. They can watch us on their tablet. However it is they decide to use the link. We want to try and inform, educate, and empower as many people as you possibly, or as we possibly can, because this is a concerted group effort, a concerted group effort on this particular night. And again, thank you all for joining us. And we want you to keep your hearts and minds open. We also want you to prepare to ask questions. We want to see your opinions and comments in the comment section. I will be paying attention to it, and I'll ask those who support me, you know who you are, to also bring comments and questions to my attention at the end of the comment section, in the comment section, so that I can notice them and recognize them if necessary. Vivian said that she's tagged. Who else is tagged and shared? As a matter of fact, as you see people coming in the live stream, welcome them and greet them to this space, and then encourage them to tag and share. The numbers are going up. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm getting ready to introduce my guests on tonight, but I entitled this, matter of fact, I reached out to my lovely niece, Hillary, and asked her for some suggestions. Good evening, Greg Yancey. Some suggestions on what we should entitle this. And she came back with Politics Beyond Belief. This is not necessarily anything that's related to a belief system or religious belief system. I like the name because I'm in just awe, or I'm awestruck about, in my humble opinion, the minimal or minimized, or the lower quality, in my opinion, of candidates that we've had in the last few election cycles. And so this is why that name resonated with me, because I'm constantly talking to people who don't like either candidate, and they use certain terms to describe why. And I don't like to hear people say the lesser of two evils. But the bottom line is that I think in the last several election cycles that we have not seen a plethora of dynamic and powerful candidates to lead our nation. And I am hoping to see in the future that this changes for our nation. Leadership, a country rises and falls on its leadership, like a home rises and falls on its leadership. Corporations rise and fall based on leadership. And so I'm about to bring my guest on. I'm going to bring them on one at a time. And after that, we'll have a group collective discussion, and we are going to go from there. First person, let me get this picture off the screen. Bear with us as we prepare to delve into some topics here on tonight. We'll move that off the screen. There we go. Put myself back on there. Here we go. First person I'm going to introduce to you tonight is none other than Christopher Green, my nephew, Christopher Green. Let me give you a little bit of background on him. Now, let me say this. I'm bringing on people I know, and you can count on this. Should I ever elevate to a status of prominence where people know me around the world, the first people I'm going to reach out to are knowledgeable people I know and love. And there are an innumerable amount of people, I should say, or maybe I should say a large quantity of qualitative people whom I know who are very informed and don't have the limelight or the spotlight. And so my nephew, Christopher Green II, is a 28-year-old native of Sikeston, Missouri. Chris is a gifted, articulate minister, worship leader, and political enthusiast. He's active in both the local church and jurisdiction within the Church of God in Christ. Chris currently is a talent acquisition specialist for a job agency. That means he finds folks jobs. He graduated from Southeast Missouri State University with a bachelor's degree in management and emphasis on HR management. Chris is single and proud owner of Oma, his deer cat. Come on, let's welcome Christopher Green II.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on, let's welcome him in the chat. Show Chris some love, some hand claps, all that wonderful stuff. Let's do it for Chris. All right. We're going to also welcome our next guest. Martin Baker is our next guest. Martin is a co-founder of MoveOnUp.org, a Black conservative organization with membership in more than 40 states. He is a native of Sikeston, Missouri, and was a former candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives in Missouri's 1st and 5th congressional districts. Prior to and after being a candidate, Martin consulted for various political campaigns on the local, state, and federal level. Currently, Martin is a national ambassador for Project 21, an initiative of the National Center for Public Policy Research. Through this effort, he has been featured in opinion editorials in newspapers, participated in public policy discussions on radio and television, given speeches for student, business, and community groups, and advised policymakers on the nation, state, and local levels. Come on, let's show some love to Martin Baker.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I want to mention that Martin Baker is the brother of my beloved brother and friend, Apostle George Baker, who crossed over a few years ago. And I'm so glad that Martin could be with us. And if George was here, he'd be texting me stuff about his brother. Cynical stuff, Martin. He'd be saying crazy stuff right now.
No, it would just be crazy. Not cynical. It'd just be crazy.
It'd just be crazy.
We all know George he was a spiritual giant, but he was crazy as two sticks, as the late Susie Baker would say.
Yes, spiritual and a brilliant brother. All right. The next coming to the stage is another loved one of mine, one of my favorite people in the whole world. I've been knowing him all my life. That's Myron Fletcher. He is a powerful preacher, speaker, as well as an interventionist history teacher in the Clayton School District in St. Louis, Missouri. As a leader, he has led the effort in mentoring through impactful organizations such as the St. Louis Football U as communication director, spokesman for Young Saints in Action organization, and others. His contributions and passions have developed young men and women into world-changing leaders of today and tomorrow. Mr. Fletcher received his bachelor's degree in corporate communication from Lindenwood University and currently is pursuing a master's degree in secondary administration. He is the head wrestling coach and assistant football coach at Clayton High School. He's married to LaSanta Fletcher. Together, they have a wonderful son named Zachary. Come on, let's welcome to Spiritual Awakening and Politics Beyond Belief tonight, Myron Fletcher.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Glad to have you, brother. Glad to have you, and look forward to some more of those passionate discussions. Last and certainly not least is another brother from another mother, whom I love from the depths of my heart. Lorenzo is one of the most cerebral and brilliant men I've ever known in my personal life. He's a native of Sikeston, Missouri. Lorenzo is known for his intellectual prowess and dynamic leadership. He has held numerous powerful positions, including being the first person of African descent in Sikeston, Missouri to hold the position of Community of Development Director, formerly a division of the Public Works Department. He was responsible for code enforcement, building permits and inspections, animal control, and PAWS, animal shelter, solid waste, and coordination with the Land Clearance for Redevelopment Authority for the whole city. Lorenzo holds a bachelor's degree in political science and government with a minor in criminal justice. He also holds a master's degree in public administration. He is a 33rd degree Mason. I needed to throw that in there because you got to be on your stuff to rise to the highest level in that organization. I want you to welcome my brother from another mother, Lorenzo Ware, to the platform. Come on, let's show him some love, family. Show him some love on Facebook and YouTube. The love is coming in. The love is coming in. People are speaking. They're saying, welcome, Lorenzo. All right. Welcome, Chris, Martin, and Myron. Love y'all so dearly. How y'all doing tonight?
Wonderful.
Y'all good?
Yes, sir.
Excellent, excellent. Y'all ready to get it on?
Let's do this. It's on like a steaming hot pot of neck bones.
Oh my God. I haven't had those in years. He said a steaming pot of neck bones. Now listen, I got to put this up on the screen before we get started. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own. Do not necessarily reflect the beliefs, values, or positions of our program. I had to get that out there today. And before we get started, fellas, I'm going to get into some statistics and we're going to move from there. Again, I want to reiterate to people that this is a session to inform you. That's what this is about. This is a session to inform you. All right. I want you to understand that. You get to make up your own minds. Nobody on this panel is trying to force you or coerce you into doing anything. I got a loved one on here now who's a cousin, fellas, who talked about a friend of his who basically decided she saw him differently because he put a post up, about his faith along with abortion connected to, I guess, in the election. And so people become very agitated, aggravated, and of course, it's very polarizing. And so the bottom line is people are going to speak from their hearts tonight, but it's up to you to make your decision in terms of who you will vote for. And I always encourage people to vote from their conscience. So check this out, fellas. I'm going to give us a few statistics we're going to start with. And I do have a series of questions that we will pick up along the way as it fits into our discussion. Now, according to a poll that was done, the Pew Research has done its own polls. They are claiming that these are the top 6 issues in the upcoming election. And they also share in this particular poll what it means to each party or the followers of the candidates who are running. So number one, you can guess, is the economy. 68% of Harris supporters are concerned about the economy, 93% of Trump supporters, and overall, 81% of people are concerned about the economy. Number 2 is healthcare. 55% of Harris supporters, 76% of Trump supporters, 65% overall. Number 3, Supreme Court appointments. 54% of Harris supporters, 73% of Trump supporters, and 63% overall. As it relates to foreign policy, 54% of Harris supporters are concerned, 70% of Trump supporters, 62% of all voters. The next one is violent crime. That's number 5. 46% of Harris supporters are concerned, 76% of Trump supporters, and 61% overall. And last but not least, there's more, but I just want to stop at the top 6, is immigration. 39% of Harris supporters are concerned about immigration policies, 82% of Trump supporters, and 61% of all voters. So I want to start with our panel today, starting with the economy. The economy. What do you think about the present economy? And tell me what your views are about the points of view of both Kamala Harris as well as President Trump as it relates to their stances on the economy. Don't everybody jump in at one time.
Yeah, I don't. You want us to just go?
Just go with it. Go with the flow.
So I'll go. I'll start it off.
Okay.
I'll be brief, and forgive me because I may jump back in when everyone else gets going. But I'll start the conversation off. So Right now, the economy is bread is high, eggs are high, gas are high. It's not the highest it's been, right? I hear everyone say that there is under the Trump administration, we had money, right? They say we had money under Trump and everything was good under Trump. But my rebut to that is for the first 2 years, it was good. It was good for the first 2 years because that money came from the Obama administration, right? And everything was good. The stimulus check you got came from Obama. It was designed during a time where people were trying to save because of the economy. It was designed to give you your own money back so that you can spend it to spark the economy. And all of a sudden, the narrative have been spun where now we are believing that that was a generous donation from Donald Trump, but it actually wasn't. Matter of fact, the economy dropped, got worse the last 2 years under the Trump administration. The first 2 years were good. It was a runover from the Obama administration, but the policies of the Trump administration, according to Al Jazeera, was one of the worst that we've seen in the last 4 presidents. And thus, you come into the Biden administration, and we're getting out of a deficit that we were not in prior. We're trying to, they're trying to dig their way out of a deficit that was not there pre Trump admin, and but it was there post Trump admin. And so the economy, when you look at it, it to me, it totally depends on where you are on the economical spectrum. If you are a multimillionaire and a billionaire, the economy really does not affect you because you can afford everything. But if you are living paycheck to paycheck, or you're 2 paychecks away from being on the street, the economy has to be better. Inflation is taking over. The gas prices are high. When you go to the grocery store, everything now is inflated. And so people are looking for relief. They're looking for someone to come in and give them hope that their dollar will stretch. Now, you can take your choice on who you want to pick in that regard, but my caution is this: do your research before you make a rational decision. Do your research before you go to the voting booth. Before you go behind that curtain, make sure that you research each candidate's economy plans, especially for African Americans, because they're not the same, nor have you been thought about in both of them, right? In one, which we're gonna get into in a second, you're not thought about at all. And then another, you're thought about, but it's cautious, because and I tell people, and I'll pass it on. I try to explain to people, this is Social Studies 101, and that is that the president can sign what comes across his desk. But if it doesn't come across his desk, then he can't sign it. The vice president has nothing to do with laws, right? The vice president does not come in and make laws, nor sign laws over. Break a tie, but can't sign laws. And the president can only sign, unless he do an executive order, can only sign what comes across his desk. So be careful when you go to the voting booths, that you are well informed on what candidate is going to have your best interest at heart.
Okay, and we're going to get into some specifics in a few minutes about both of their suggestions on the economy. Come on, who else wants to chime in? Both candidates, I should say. Go ahead.
I'm going to preface what I'm going to say with something that a long time ago, one of the esteemed panel members here, Mr. Lorenzo Ware, taught me, and I thank him for that, is that we have to keep in mind also that because of the media or whatever the case may be, we put a lot of emphasis on economic growth or digression on a president, on a Congress, on a whole lot of things that really, when we see things from the grand scheme of all, economics is all cyclical. And yes, Myron was correct. There are a lot of things going into the Trump presidency that were carryovers from the Obama presidency, and then the Biden presidency had the same thing. But we always see that because a lot of the legislation that is signed will not have a direct or instant effect on an economy during that president's presidency. When we look at the grand scheme of growth, once you also include the pandemic, which was the final 2 years of the Trump presidency, we still see average growth of about 2.3% over his 4 years. During the Biden years, it's still about 2.2% when you look at growth overall, economics-wise. So all of that is that the numbers turn out to be basically negligible when you look at it from that standpoint. We also want to look at a couple of other things. I will go back to the Trump years when we had the pandemic, when you had the stimulus checks that were coming out then. You also had what was called qualitative easing, where you were adding more money into circulation to try to get people to spend money. But what we ended up doing in the process, by adding all of that into the economy, and then it also spilled over into the Biden presidency as well, we had 85% of all the currency, paper currency that was in circulation added between 2020 and 2022, which also devalued the money that we had in circulation even going in today. That's why you see things like inflation. That's why you're going to see things like the economic, while it still looks like the economy is still going slow, the economy is still trying to right itself. And Marvin was correct. A president cannot, on his own, just instantly do legislation beyond an executive order. Now, when that executive order only pretty much affects only federal employees, such as if you had a president who says that he wants to increase the minimum wage, it would only affect federal employees. It would not affect the average rank and file person working at a McDonald's or at a hospital or whatever it is. So again, like I also echo with Myron, is look at where your economy is right now. I remember something that Ronald Reagan used to say. It used to be an old Republican mantra: are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And I'm not saying that just because of the fact that the Republicans did better or the Democrats did worse. Don't take it as that. Look at how it affected you as a person, as a prospective voter, or if you're on the fence. Don't just stick with the constructs of what your party says or what you believe lifelong because it's been handed down. Because most of the political beliefs of most people are generational. My father was this way. My mother was this way. My grandfather was this way. So take all those constructs out and look at the raw numbers. I see someone in the chat saying that we have stats. These stats are all over. You can look at them through the Office of Management of Budget. You can also look at them. Don't just look at them through one source. Look at multiple sources and then draw your own conclusions. That's my thought.
Okay. You want to jump in here, Lorenzo, and then Chris?
Yeah. So, panel, thank you all for talking about this. Myron, I agree with you a lot. The cyclical nature of the economy, Martin, as you and I have discussed, we have to realize something. 20% of the country owns 80% of our wealth. That's why you don't see the dynamic ups and downs in the market. And you know, this has always been true in our community, especially when the upper echelon catches a cold, we catch the flu down here. Okay. So that 2 or 3 tenths of a percent influx affects us on the bottom. It doesn't affect those on the top. And Myron, to go back to your point, you're exactly right, because those of us that are old enough to remember when Barack Obama took over the car that had been ran into the ditch by the previous administration, we were almost in depression, right? If everybody remembers that time period. So he worked really, really hard on the 8-year process to bring us into prosperity. And Trump benefited from that prosperity for 2 years. But now what we're seeing is the leftover time from Donald Trump. And I think any economist can also, go ahead and agree with what's going on here. Now, my problem is what's happening in our community right now, because I still think we have remnants of the flu in our community, while the trickle down has not happened in our culture right now. So that's one of these important issues that I feel like we have to keep watching with these two candidates, because I think one of them is going to benefit 20%, and the other one seems to be a little more focused on the 80%. And I'll turn it over to you, Chris, at this point.
Yeah, I will actually kind of backtrack here and piggyback off of what Mr. Baker said in regard to the question that Ronald Reagan asked, and also the question that you have people like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump who are asking, were you better off 4 years ago than you are now? Me personally, I will say, yes, I am. And I can say that because just looking at my own like check, noticed the other week, hey, I'm getting extra $20 back in my paycheck every week. That is a sign that this economy is getting healthier, that things are starting to pan out. When I go to the grocery store, I noticed a 6-pack roll of paper towels of the Great Value brand. They were like, I want to say about $11 and some change. Now they're like a little under $9. That's not a whole lot. And I think what the issue is with the economy and why the Biden-Harris administration is not getting as much credit as they deserve for helping the economy to get healthier is because of how media has chosen to cover some of these things. And because obviously, we all want all the money back in our pocket right now as as much of it as we can possibly get. But I think because of how the media is presenting things, and of course, the disinformation that's floating around in, I will say, conservative echo chambers, it's creating this smoke screen of things are not what they seem when they actually are getting better. And again, they may not be significant jumps, they may not be significant changes, but this is the start of us getting back into a healthier state so that people can add more. And for me personally, it's like that extra $20 back in my paycheck. Hey, that's $20 I can put back into my savings. That's $20 I can put toward, a bill. That's $20 if I want to take my little cousins out for ice cream or something. We can blow the $20 on that, whatever. But it's significant, I think, to the power that the Biden administration and that the hopefully future Harris administration is trying to give back to the American people. That's kind of my take on that with the economy.
So if you don't mind, if
Go
I
ahead.
can jump back in here real quick.
Yes, go ahead. And after this, I'm going to point out a few particulars from the economic proposals of both candidates. Go ahead, Myron, with your thought.
So, and it's going back, and I don't want to regurgitate too much, but Martin actually was right with the 2.3% growth, but you have that same growth, a continuous growth under the current administration. It was 2.2% under the same administration. Mm-hmm. So there's not a drop. The problem is, like Brother Lorenzo said, it has not trickled down far enough, right? And that's, I think, what we need to look at if we're talking about our families being okay, if we're talking about our communities being okay, if we are going to really be able to honestly say to our neighbors that we are okay and our kids are going to be okay, we have to look at both sides, that the dollar has not, the advantages have not trickled down to our street, to our neighborhood. And that, to me, is more of an economical status than it is a color or racial issue. although there are some racial issue components involved in it, but you have white people that are trying to get bread, and you have black people that are trying to get bread. And it's not feasible. And whenever you have to make a choice between your medicine and food, something is wrong in supposedly the richest country or one of the most powerful countries in the world. So take a look at that. And again, being nonpartisan, take a look. I encourage everyone to do your research of what's happening in the next in both camps and what they are not just promising, but what have they done. You cannot look at a promise. You can't take, as my father would say, I can't take promise to Kroger. I can't take promise to Schnucks. So do not look at the promise. Let the track record and the resume speak for you and make that choice for you.
So let's quickly, and I know this is not getting into the nuts and bolts of either candidates' agendas as it relates to the economy, but I want to highlight just a few and kind of discuss from your perspectives or your opinions if it's actually going to make a difference in the economy. So Kamala Harris camp produced an 82-page policy paper in September, late September, where they shared a few things about several issues we're dealing with the economy right now. So the first thing we're going to deal with is price gouging as it relates to groceries. She's calling for the first ever federal ban on price gouging on food and groceries. The policy paper specified that the ban would be aimed at big corporations unfairly exploiting consumers during crisis and emergencies to increase their profits, and compared Harris' idea to similar price gouging bans already in place in 37 states, including Texas and Florida. The next thing, and we'll cover a few at a time, Harris would also consider new authority for the Federal Trade Commission and state attorneys general to investigate and penalize companies that unfairly exploit consumers in the quest for excessive profits on food and groceries. So let's just talk about that for a few minutes. Is what she's suggesting here gets price gouging, more specifically in crises, implementing penalties against businesses and corporations that are unnecessarily price gouging? Is that going to impact the little man or not? What's your opinion on that?
I'm going to jump in and say I don't believe that it will, and this is why. And I'm not saying that. I want to look at it this way: is that initially, sure, it's going to affect the larger corporations, but again, to use what both Myron and what Lorenzo has said, how is that going to trickle down? If you have a mom and pop grocery store that is getting products from, say, from some corporate warehouse or something like that, is it really going to affect them with their price wise so they can in turn bring those, for lack of a better phrase, those savings on to someone else, to another person? This is where I'm fearful of the government trying to step in to try to set prices where it seems like it will give the perception that they are picking winners or losers in something like that, especially in private enterprise, which I do not believe is the role of government to do.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in here?
Yeah, I want to jump in for a second, and this is unbelievable, but I do agree with Martin. We are a capitalist society, right? So if you don't like the price of something, quit buying it. It's not a hard decision. You don't need that $10 bag of M&Ms when it was $4 3 days ago. So we actually control that market. Now, if you want to spend that extra $20 that you got to go buy one bag of M&Ms, by all means do it. I'm not picking on your money, by the way, but by all means go do it. But I don't think we need the government to tell us or to tell some company that we're not going to allow you to make the money. Now, I know there was price gouging. You know, things increased during COVID and they didn't increase after COVID. So we understand that. But the corporations decided that, oh, they're going to pay $10 for my bag of M&Ms. Why would I destroy my profitability? So I think as a people, we have to decide what we're willing to pay for, and we can drive that market back down. I don't think government has to get involved in that. You know, that's just my opinion.
So you think the solution is just not, supporting businesses who do price gouge? You think that's a better solution than what she's suggesting?
It's called free market economy. It's like Lorenzo just said. If I'm going to go back to my days in St. Louis, if I know that Schnucks has my ground beef for $3.95 a pound, I'm not going to go to Deerberg's and pay $5.50 a pound. And eventually Deerberg's going to have to say, wait a second, we're losing profit share because of the fact that people are going to Schnucks to buy this more, and the government didn't need to tell me that. If I as a consumer say, I can't go shop here because of the fact that it's out of my price range, it's out of my budget, then that's me, for lack of a phrase, that's me voting with my wallet, where I am selecting something based on market indicators. And the government didn't need to tell me that I needed to do that.
Okay.
So
And
if I can real quick, I agree to a certain extent. Now I agree when we talk about M&Ms, or we talk about bread or bag of chips, not even bread, but a bag of chips, because that could be considered frivolous spending, right? But I worked at a pharmaceutical company, and insulin that people needed. Talk about a capitalist system, talk about a wide open market. Insulin was $7,000+ per 3-ounce vial. Now, this is medicine people need to live. And insurance would only pay a certain percentage, and out of pocket, that person had to pay $1,200, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now explain to me the logic, because it didn't take $7,000 for them to make that insulin. The insulin was only made it only took a couple of $100s to manufacture that insulin, but they're charging $7,000. Now that, to me, needs government regulation, because I have nowhere else to go. Right? There's nobody else that I can't go to Schnucks and buy insulin. Right? I can't shop around and buy insulin, because everybody price is astronomical. If also we go back to the benefits of it not coming to my block, not coming down to my house in my neighborhood, it doesn't matter whether it's Deerberg's or Schnucks. If bread is out of my budget and I have to make a decision between bread and something else, it's too much, right? And we'll get into the solution of this that I believe later on, but there is a such thing as being greedy, even in a capitalist system, right? Jesus said that the poor you'll have with me always. And he wasn't talking because they were frivolously spending money. It's because the system was a capitalist system, and we see it in America more than we see it anywhere else, where that you can get rich however you can, and the poor people will be left out. And to that I say that you cannot allow a billionaire to collect billions and the effect is that some woman that lives in middle class America or below has to die because she couldn't afford the insulin. That to me is it needs to be looked at, right? It needs to be looked at, and I do believe that there is a degree that the government can come in, but at the same time, there has to be a line that cannot be crossed. In Canada, they don't have that problem. I would
Well,
like
let's
to-
speak. Let's speak on that, and I want to comment on. We got Greg Yancey. He's a veteran. He's saying, "Great point, Myron. I'm a diabetic, and if it wasn't for a veteran being a veteran, I couldn't afford insulin at all." So let's speak to that, and then let's just make this turn real quickly. I wanted to stay on the economy, but I do want to get into healthcare in a minute. So I know some of you all want to finish up this subject. He makes a great point about medicine, because I personally am very passionate when it comes down to subjects like this. There are people right now, and I've been in that category, who are in need of medical care, medical attention. Some of them, many of them, fellas, have insurance and still can't afford the medications that are prescribed to them by their doctors. What are your thoughts on that? And while we're at this juncture, what is the solution? Because this appears to be a problem. I have shared this with some of you all separately. In Atlanta, I met doctors from overseas, England, various different nationalities, and they had questions for me about our healthcare system. And when I start sharing with them that our healthcare system is based on affordability, if you can pay it or not. And we talked about the cost. I shared with them the cost of prescriptions. I talked to them about how the owner of the quote unquote EpiPen, the new owner, took the price up by like $200-300. By the time I got finished, you should have saw the look of horror on their faces. Because they were like, in our country, it comes out of your taxes. They said prescriptions cannot go above a certain amount. It's all regulated by the government. Everybody has access to health care. They even told me the cost differences, like between a bandage or a syringe or something like that over there versus what's charged over here, because they had at that time toured U.S. hospitals. So they knew some of the stuff that I was saying was true, because they could see the prices on the stuff behind the scenes that they were charging patients in the hospital. So what do you all think about the point that Myron just made?
If I can jump in just really quick, Myron, I agree with you as well. We as people of faith, we want to jump in. You know, the scriptures tell us, if someone is sick, you minister to them. If someone is hungry, you feed them. If they are naked, you clothe them. All of those things. And the government does not need to tell us that. We claim to serve a God who empowers us to do those things without a government telling us to do those things. And so I don't need a government intervention to tell me to serve others. And when the government comes in and tries to tell me to do a certain thing, what's to stop the government from coming back and telling me to do something else? If they can tell me to cap if I'm running Baker's store, and they tell me your price can only be capped at such an amount, are they going to be offering me a tax credit in return for that? They probably will not. They're going to also ask me to be under onerous regulations on a state, local, federal level as well, so they can still get their cut into that. A lot of the pricing that goes on, and please do not mistake this as me being an apologist for big pharma or for anything else like that. A lot of the pricing that comes into that is the cost of regulations that the government has embedded into a lot of that pricing. A lot of it has. Am I saying that they're not trying to get a profit? Of course they absolutely are. So they're going to put their part into it as well. But when you have both of those, when you have the government being an irresistible force and the quest for profits as an immovable object, obviously somebody's going to get squeezed in the middle. And it's whether it's the lower income, it's us in the mid to lower income that is going to get squashed in the middle of it, because of the fact that we're just collateral damage and all of those things. Now, when you brought up Canada, when you brought up all those other places that have national healthcare system, let's look at Canada, for example. Canada has a higher income tax rate than Americans do, because of those social services that they have embedded into their national system. If you look at the United Kingdom, same premise applies. When they have it embedded into their tax rate, Are we advocating let's nationalize and socialize everything across the board with that? And then you're going to have an absolute run of folks who are still going to be priced out of it because they're taxed out of my thought of it is that if we nationalize healthcare on a grander scheme than we already have, far beyond the VA, far beyond Medicare, far beyond Medicaid, far beyond the provision of the Affordable Care Act, we are going to price ourselves out into even larger inflation, in my opinion. We're going to have people that are still not going to be able to have their health needs met. At what point?
So let me interject this, and Lorenzo and Chris might want to say something. All due respect, that's a bunch of foolishness. The reason why it's a bunch of foolishness to me is because we send billions of dollars to other countries to help fight their wars. We find ways, Martin, and you know this. I'm sitting back amazed. How can you send a country $50 billion? How can you send somebody $100 billion?
I'm not with you on this one.
It's like people are acting like.
You don't get me wrong.
Growing up, where there's a will, there's a way.
Don't get me wrong. I do not
like the U.S. is crying poor and broke,
right?
Until it's time for them to help other nations.
I agree.
If we really had a desire to have a balanced, equitable healthcare system, whether it increases taxes or not increases taxes, or we use other creative ways, we would come up with that solution. Just like Congress convenes to decide they're going to send a bunch of money to another country. That kind of stuff just doesn't make sense to me. Come on, talk to me.
I agree.
I don't want to go on that tangent.
No, I absolutely agree with you. It is foolishness that we can't find a way to take care of homeless veterans or to address our issues.
Yes.
We went into Ukraine and sent billions over there, and we actually, during the early stages of the Ukraine-Russia war, we were sustaining our tax dollars were paying their public safety workers, but we can't pay our own.
Yeah.
I take great issue with that. You can call me an isolationist or whatever you want to call me, but I believe, again, all the buddies to say it, George always say this, how are we taking care of somebody else's house if we're not taking care of our home first? I will, that is one of I am strictly an isolationist, is that I cannot go running outside my house, telling somebody else how to take care of theirs if my house is in disorder. And our house is in disorder because of the fact, and I agree with you, that we're sending way too much money out. But we're looking at that the way that any administration, whether it was the Trump administration, the Obama administration, the Clinton administration, we can go all the way back. We are looking at that as, and this is again, you're going to call it foolishness, but it is the foolishness that has been policy forever and a day. We are using those dollars as a means to advance the American agenda. And to steal a phrase from my campaign manager, Becky, how'd that work out for us?
Come on, fellas. Chris and Lorenzo, I want y'all to get in on this.
I think this issue, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, I think this issue is more based, and I think we have to stop looking at it as we're blowing money in other countries and start looking at it as we are investing in that vanguard, in that frontier for democracy. For example, like you brought up Ukraine. If Ukraine falls, what is stopping Vladimir Putin from going after, as Kamala Harris has also said, going after the rest of Europe? Us sending these dollars, yes, we do have our own people here that we need to pay. We have our own people here that we do need to take care of. And I agree, there should be a better way to do that. But at the same time, if we have all of these external threats that are out there that could potentially interrupt our entire way of life, then what good is it for us to, pay our people, but our people are now, potentially have to learn how to speak Russian because we've been invaded, because one of our allies fell. It's a matter of, and this is where I don't think, I will admit rather that I don't think the Biden administration has done a very good job at helping especially younger people in my generation to understand why we have a more globalist mentality, why we are more interested in making sure that the small guys out there are able to protect themselves and defend themselves. Because again, that fire, once it starts, it's going to spread. And if we don't, yes, we're a superpower. Yes, we can handle our own, but it's easier when you have allies. And can we say that we're friends and you're not willing to help me when I need just a little bit of help? So I think I think if we really change our perspective on, again, not looking at this as, oh, we're just sending them money and sending them money. No, this is an investment for the well-being of our future and the future of world peace, for crying out loud.
Now, before Lorenzo speaks on that, a former military man, let me interject here. I agree with some of what you're saying, and I don't have a problem with us helping other nations. But what I have learned is that everything in this world is defined by value and worth.
Agreed.
You and I are defined by value, period. That's why we have monetary systems. Before that, it was trading and bartering. This is my challenge, and I want Lorenzo to speak. See, when you have billions of dollars that you can access, and you say, well, I want to invest it in my foreign domestic policy to keep my allies happy and to make sure it protects our interests overseas, you are basically saying that those people in the moment are more valuable than the people that's been here generationally.
Ooh.
Because I am not going to raise money to help them because they are a lower priority on the scale. Oh, we don't care that they help build this nation. We don't care that they're in our factories, in our corporations every day. But if something of interest, watch this, of higher priority or of higher value on our scale to us, needs us, we find money from somewhere to be able to do it. That's my whole challenge. It is a very, very subjective thing. And it is always based on how you define value in a nation, in a people. Go ahead, Lorenzo.
No, those are excellent points. Myron, I completely agree with you. On medical necessities, we need some type of government intervention. Brothers, I travel all over the world, for those of you that know me personally. I can get full coverage, top of the line insurance in Bogota, Colombia for $500 US a year because they have things controlled. How many people do we have that leave this country and go to other countries to get expensive surgeries and different types of procedures that cost 100 times less in another country? And we're the most advanced country that there is. So, and Anthony, I hear your point about us giving money to other places, but I do say this about this country: we can walk and chew gum at the same time, brothers.
Yes.
We're not a one-dimensional country where we have to worry about, well, do we have enough money to take care of the homeless here? Do we have enough money to take care of the medical over there? And what about the foreign dignitaries? We have enough money and enough experience to take care of it all at once. We as a people have to help them prioritize what's important to us. You just read off a list when this whole thing started about what's important to the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody say the price of insulin? No, but it hurts everybody every single day. So my point is, the people, we drive what drives those in Congress, and we tend to forget that. We like to put it all on the president or whomever's sitting in that big office.
Absolutely.
That the people in Congress work for us. And if they're not up there reflecting what we say we want done, then we need to replace them. So that falls back on us. I do completely agree with you, Myron. I'm not agreeing with you on that one, Martin. I think the federal government needs to stand in on health issues because we deserve it. We paid the money into the system. Food is a different area, but when you talk about healthcare, brother, these insurance companies are making a killing. I have been to Novartis, who is the number 2 pharmaceutical company in the world. They live lavishly. They work lavishly because they have so much money to spend, and they literally pay pennies to create these toxins that they give us for thousands of dollars. So I completely understand on that aspect. But on the foreign, and I agree with you, Chris, we have to make investments to keep war out of this country. When is the last time we've had a war in this country, guys? Anytime in our lifetime? No. Because we pay protection money is what we're doing, right?
Mhm.
You know, it's not a this bag or that bag. We have enough money, enough resources, as you said, Anthony. We can find money when we need to, but the public outcry has to drive the way that these funds are dispersed. So, that's my little opinion.
Okay. Excellent points, fellas. I appreciate you. Let's segue into, let's look at some suggestions from Trump. Since we're on healthcare, um, Trump has been boasting for several months that he wants to replace the Affordable Care Act, known colloquially as Obamacare, in a series of posts on Truth Social. And of course, he said it in the recent debate as well. Quote, getting much better healthcare than Obamacare for the American people would be a priority of the Trump administration. The question I put on the floor is this. If I don't know how much knowledge this panel has about Obamacare. What's wrong with Obamacare? What's wrong with the Affordable Care Act? It's not perfect. We understand nothing is perfect, but why does he seem to have issues with it? And let me say this about healthcare. This Affordable Care Act, which they fought Obama tooth and nail, in my humble opinion, has been one of the best things that's happened in this country in the last couple hundred years. You tried to make healthcare accessible to more people who could otherwise not afford it. So now it's like, since its inception, it's been fought by a certain party. You're continuing to nitpick at it. So my first question is there something wrong with the Affordable Care Act? Secondly, is there something wrong with the desire, the notion, the decency to want to see your people have health care?
So I'm going to start this one off, and then I'm going to bow out. There's absolutely nothing wrong with national health care because we don't need national diseases. We don't need national sickness, because if the lower or economically challenged portion of our country can't afford health care, it's going to breed disease, it's going to breed sickness, and that's going to trickle up to everyone else. I hope we can all agree on that. Mm-hmm. So having a national health care plan is not just a protection for the lower or those who can't afford it, it's a protection for the entire country. You know, so I don't understand how certain parties or political entities determine the fact that someone's worth is so low that they don't deserve to have basic health care, okay? I think that's a necessity in our country. My problem is when you promise to fix something and you show me a manual of 230 whatever odd pages of blank pages because you're trying to put on a particular show, or when you've had 8 years to contemplate a situation and you tell me you have a concept of a cure, I have a problem. Because, you know, my people need health insurance. And they need to keep doing what we're doing. I don't have a problem with Obamacare or the national health care. I think it's fine, and I'm fine paying my taxes because I don't want health issues to run rampant in this country to the point that we're having another bubonic plague, you know, like over in Europe, when it starts low and then it spreads to everyone else. And so that's just, I think it's necessary.
I think.
Come on, Myron.
I also think that there's absolutely nothing wrong with Obamacare or affordable health care. I also agree. I believe that it was one of the greatest things that has happened to America, specifically Black America, because Black America benefited greatly. We were leading the nation in the one group that did not have or did not take care of preventative care for themselves. Our women were dying at high rates because of lack of health care. I'm sure we all know someone in our family who died because of lack of health care, because they didn't get their medicine or they didn't have insurance. Affordable health care changed all of that. It gave us better access to affordable health care. It allowed you to carry your kids till they were 26 years old to make sure that in college they were able to be healthy. And that for Black women between the ages of 18 and 30 was huge. It was tremendous. It helped catch diseases before they got too bad. It helped Black men. Prostate cancer was detected earlier because of Affordable Health Care Act. It's undeniable. And I think to want to rip that away, to want to not care about poor people, but yet allow the upper 1% or 1.2% now of the wealthy to not have to care and carry their own weight to help those that are beneath is a heart issue. I think that's a heart issue. And the one thing that I know about a heart issue is that if a person does not want to do it, they will not do it. And no matter what you say, no matter how much protesting you do, if God doesn't touch the heart of man, they will not change. Rioting does not change people's hearts. What it did was it caused legislation to happen that made that hard heart behave. But the hard heart, Bull Connors didn't want to sit next to Black people. He had to, or else he would have to pay a fine. He would have to go to jail. It doesn't change a racist heart. It makes a racist heart do well. So there has to be legislation to help curb that. And Obamacare was that legislation that made people whose heart was callous to poor people or people that could not afford, it made them pay attention to them. And it gave advantage or gave benefits to those who otherwise were invisible in America. And so affordable health care was magnificent. Now, to take that away, actually what is happening is in the previous administration, they wanted to downplay it, not vote for it until Trump got elected. And then they were going to unveil the exact same thing that Obama had. Go research it. That's what they had. That was their plan. But he didn't win. Biden won. So now nobody wants to admit that they were for affordable health care. While Obama was in office, they were trying to dismantle it and talking bad about it. But then they, in the back room, they wanted to unveil it if Trump would have won. So affordable health care was something that was much needed, not just for America, but for Black America especially.
All right, great. The last two, and then I want to play a video from Kamala Harris right quick and get your thoughts on what she says. Martin and then Chris.
I'm going to go with a couple of things. From the start of when the Affordable Care Act was first put into place up until today, the increase in even the cheapest plans, the premiums have increased by 32%. It has increased entitlement spending by $4.8 trillion. Since the Affordable Care Act was enacted, medical costs have become 18.3% of our gross domestic product. We are still looking at the fact that the provisions of the Affordable Care Act do not allow a person to go, like, I can't go over to Illinois and go buy a health care plan. I can't go to Arkansas or Kansas or any of those places like that. That would allow for competition. An insurance agent, if I could find an insurance agent in Illinois that could cost me more than what I would have for in here in Missouri, I can't do that because that would violate the terms of that. And then more importantly, there are still, at last report, there are still 30 million people in the United States of America that are still uninsured. And we still are looking at the provisions of the Affordable Care Act. This has not been affordable. This has not really truly addressed the care issues, in my opinion. And if all it is an act of government overreach. Again, we are the most charitable nation on this planet. All of us are men of faith. Our faith has spent millions, in some cases billions of dollars worldwide addressing health issues. And we didn't need the government again, we didn't need the government to tell us to do it. That's just my thought on it.
Okay. Chris, what are you thinking?
So I will agree with both Myron and Mr. Baker here because, yes, as to Myron's point, that it's about access, and I think that's the key word there. I do remember being younger, when Obama first came into office, and Obamacare was like on the floor and all that. And obviously, being young, I didn't know all the ins and outs and everything of it. But I do remember, as Mr. Baker was pointing out, that into that whole idea of being confined and not being able to have your choice of a healthcare provider or where you want to go, again, if you want to go across state lines and all that kind of stuff. But I think what people are or fail to realize about Obamacare was that it's not for people who have a nice cushion job who can afford to get the healthcare through their companies and things like that. This is for, again, those people who don't have access, those people who like myself, I was in college and I needed a health plan. I didn't have a job at the time that afforded me to be able to have a certain amount taken out every month for my healthcare plan. No, I had to use the Affordable Health Care Act to have access to healthcare while I put myself through school. So again, because that access is important, when you have lower funded communities who are now able to at least get access. And yes, I agree, premiums, they can do something about bringing the premiums down. They can do something about still lowering the cost, things of that nature. But again, it's a start for people to get access to better health. A lot of children, health issues, along with economic issues and things like that, contribute to a lot of the education that, or shall I say, the way that children go in and learn. So their education. And by giving people that access to healthcare, again, it's just one less thing that they have to worry about. It's one less thing that they have to stress over. And I can send my child to school knowing that if they get sick, that we don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul for an ear infection or, whatever the case may be. We have insurance. We can go get this taken care of. We will have to pay the premium, pay a certain amount, but this is not going to be a life or death situation. We have access to it. And as others have mentioned, there's an agenda there for trying to limit that access, but I won't go down that rabbit hole. But, nonetheless, it is about making sure that people at least have the ability to say, I need to go see a doctor, and to not be turned away because they don't have insurance or because they just feel like they cannot afford to go see a doctor, especially Black men.
Okay. Excellent opinions, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
Can I also say something?
I did a little poll on who thinks the Affordable Care Act is a good thing, and I'm getting several yeses. Go ahead and add that. Go ahead.
I just want to piggyback off of what Brother Baker said. The Affordable Health Care Act, you had high premiums, right? And I remember this specifically when I was at the pharmaceutical company. You had high premiums, but that wasn't having low premiums. If you remember when it was being shopped around, was not the topic. It was accessibility. And also, when you go to your doctor, you would not have a doctor's visit fee, or you would not have to pay a lot for your prescription drugs. Actually, the country saved $26.8 billion in prescription drugs. So you were not paying the high cost to go and get your insulin from CVS or from Walgreens that you're paying now and prior to, right? And so you had high premiums, but it paled in comparison to the other things that you had to pay high cost on top of the premium. And so Obamacare in that, or affordable health care in that regard, was very beneficial.
But let me say this.
And its insurance.
For the sake of time, we're going to move on. It sounds like this is typical in terms of how things can start out as a good thing, but there are always ways for people who feel like they're losing power to adapt. And what I mean by that is another powerful point with the Affordable Care Act was accepting anyone, regardless of pre-existing conditions. The
That's right.
medical community has learned how to still charge more. Again, it's hard to legislate equanimity, equitability, fairness when it's a heart issue. That's the bottom line. Let's listen to Kamala right quick. And I got a potent question I want to ask the panel after y'all hear what she has to say. This is courtesy of Fox News.
National Security Advisor and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
It's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a
so
cakewalk
are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is
God,
it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American.
All right, so let's put it on the floor. Let's make it do what it do, fellas. Is Kamala Harris right? Is Donald Trump fit to lead this country? Is he unstable? Is he irrational? That's all a part of one question. And then what the commentator redressed was, if that is the case or is not the case, why does almost 50% of the country like Donald Trump if he's displaying these unstable, brash, bully type tendencies? So, in your opinion, is he fit? And why does half of the country you think like Donald Trump? And again, family, if you're watching me, I'm an independent. There's a couple of us on here. We're independent. We ain't for no particular party. We don't care who you vote for. We just having a discussion here for you to consider. All right, I'm going to start with my brother Lorenzo.
All right, good video. The first question I have is about his fitness. Okay, I judge a person by the company they tend to keep. When you're back in his words, he was going to pick the best people for the best job, right? The best people. The best people have come back and said that he's inadequate and he's unfit. I'm not saying anything. I'm telling you what the best people said. Okay, so when I look at the experts in Donald Trump, because I don't know Trump personally, but when I look at the expert in Donald Trump who do know him personally, they declare him unfit to answer your question. I'm not in a position to judge. That's just what they say. And I'll tell you what, I tend to believe experts in their field. Okay. I do feel we have to choose what a key issue is in our individualities. Okay. I consider myself to be a Black nationalist. I'm concerned about what's going to happen in my community, but as a former military person, I'm concerned about what's happening around the world. And I will tell you, out of the two people, one of them don't tend to take advice from experts, brother. And I'm being very honest about that. When you have this world on the brink of war and you have trained specialists in the military or the intelligence agencies, and they're telling you to do X, Y, Z, and you say you woke up this morning and your stomach felt funny, so you're going to go back and do A, B, and C. I have a problem with you leading this country right now because you're going to lead us down a very bad path. So, that's my non-answer for you on that one.
Let's go to Chris. We're going to go to Chris Martin and then Myron on this. And then we're going to pull up a video from Trump talking about Kamala in a few minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, this guy is not fit. In my opinion, he's just not fit to be president. I can see if they would have put anybody else. I mean, a strong Christie. If he would have given me maybe even Nikki Haley between the two, I was kind of rooting for them to get the Republican nomination. But it for me, it's the fact that he lives his lies as if they're truth. And I can deal with a guy who just lies and you know he just doesn't care. But it's the fact that he lies, he doesn't care, and he's using his position of power to negatively affect everyday real life decisions that we have to face. I mean, when you have one of the most conservative, which I'm sure we're going to get into that eventually as well, but when you have one of the most conservative Republicans, get together on a bipartisan bill with Democrats to say, hey, this is what, and to get a deal done for the border, and then Republicans are getting mostly of what they want out of that, only for you to turn around and say, hey, no, don't vote on that because we need to run on that for an election. It baffles me that even the people that are still supporting him don't look at that and say, wait a minute, do we want a leader that like you said, waking up and you don't feel well? Do we want a leader whose attitude about our national security, about the well-being of our citizens, all that is solely predicated on just how bad he wants to win and who he wants to own and what point he has to prove? I mean, we're dealing with a prepubescent teenager that is trapped in an old man's body that just has access to way too much money. I mean, it's like it's chaos, and to think that this is who people see as a leader, he's just not fit for me at all. No, thank you.
Brother Mark.
Let me preface my words with a lot of people here on this will look at me as the one Republican here on this panel. Let me preface that I consider myself a constitutional conservative. I look at what the Constitution says first. Yes, I've ran as a Republican before, and if I run again, I probably will run as a Republican, but that's not guaranteed. That'll be whatever the Lord tells me to do at that point. On the subject of Trump, and having been in rooms where Trump has been there and had conversations, having been there, having been invited to be part of some of those policy discussions and things like that, I want to take a little bit of what my dear friend Lorenzo said, is that there are a lot of experts who were associated with Trump, who were part of his inner circle, who now have said and questioned his competency to lead. Others will say, and I want to also circle back to a certain thing. As Brett Baer said, over 50% of American voters do support Donald Trump, and this is why, and I can explain why they do.
Explain.
Number one, with a lot of things, people. I think back to something that Shakespeare said, what's in a name? People associated the name Trump, whether it's true or not, they associated it with success. Trump Castle, Trump Casino, Trump University, whatever it was, whether they were successful or not, it gave the perception of success. And perception to some people became reality. Hence why he has a following like he does. Now, once he was elected, there were a lot of policy decisions that he did make that were beneficial to the nation. And we can go into that, all about that or not, and I'm sure that we will still have this discussion. And again, that also enamored people to things like that. But also some of the policy decisions also disgusted other people. So we have to look at things in the grand design of it all. The presidency should not be a popularity contest. It shouldn't be like who likes who more, or who is the who is the again, I go back to a phrase that the Secretary of Agriculture under Eisenhower, Ezra Taft Benson, he said, when you choose the lesser of two evils, you are still choosing evil. Now, don't mistake that as me saying that Trump or Harris are evil, because I'm not. I have not personally sat down one-on-one to speak with either one of them, nor would I choose to. And that's not because of the fact that I have a dislike of either one of them. It's because of the fact that when I look for a president, I use the spectrum that I used when I ran for office. And I have what I call my little core four. And that is respect for life, respect for the U.S. Constitution, belief in limited government, and belief in personal responsibility. Now, if a candidate does not meet any of that criteria, they are not going to earn my vote. And we can sit and discuss back and forth who's earned that vote. And my esteemed colleagues here in this discussion, they all will have their own opinion. And I'm going to sit here, and again, not here to defend or not here to oppose Donald Trump or his competency. But it's going to come down to searching in someone's heart of who they best feel, with the assistance of Congress, and this is supported by the courts, can best put our nation into the direction that it needs to go into. Because at times, our nation, whomever is in the White House, seems leaderless, seems rudderless, seems that it does not have a purpose, does not have a direction. That's why we at times we are in our church buildings, we are in our homes, and we are praying for guidance with that. We need to start it there from the beginnings of that. Because again, Lorenzo said it best, and Myron said it best, is that a president can only sign what a Congress sends him. And who's sending those people to Congress? We are. We are lockstep voting for these people who have a 92 to 95% re-election rate, regardless of if they are beneficial or harmful to the nation. So maybe we need to look at ourselves with that, because we are the people that created the Trumps of the world. We are the people that created the Harrises of the world. We created all this by choosing these people, by voting these people in. This is who we are. And this is, hopefully, after this election, both sides, whether it's Trump, Harris, everybody needs to just do a hard reset and look at what do we want in a leader. Because that's what we have. And again, to steal a phrase from Lorenzo, that's my non-answer on it.
Okay. Myron's going to finish up, and then we're going to play this video from Trump speaking.
I agree with Martin on the aspect that people vote with what's familiar. They vote for the name that's familiar. I remember reading an article a few years ago, and a woman voted for a man that had died 2 years earlier, but his name was on the ballot, right? And so it is that familiarity, that comfortableness that we have with each other or with our candidates that we like, we vote for them. But I think where I splinter is when you look at the two, Donald Trump and Vice President Harris, is that I agree with Lorenzo that I tend to go with what the experts say. Now, regardless the position that we're in now, and I totally understand that the onus from a purist viewpoint is on the people. The people are supposed to be able to put who they want in the office.
And let me read this quote from your brother, Bishop Dr. Terrell Fletcher, the only millionaire who's watching us right now. And he says, they are us. And if we don't like them, our society needs to look at ourselves.
That's true.
End quote. Go ahead, keep talking.
And I agree with that. We need to take a hard look at ourselves. But then there's a reason for that also. Now, we're looking at it from this candidate. The issue with us on this level is that there are not enough of us that are consciously and intentionally researching, reading to find out who we are voting for. And so it is very easy for someone to put misinformation out there. It's very easily for you to say whatever it is that you think the people want to hear, and they vote for you. Now, it is when you look at who is voting for which candidate in this election, the majority of America that is voting for Trump are not your degreed, they're not your mastery level of higher institution individuals. They're not. They are people that are uneducated, and which means that they only hear what you say, right? They only hear. Thus, the playbook of the former administration is that we just interrupt, talk loud, and say whatever. We give the rhetoric out there, and then what the people that are that won't research for themselves, the people that won't fact check, the people that will not go and read for themselves are going to believe whatever makes sense, even if it comes from a convicted felon, even if it comes from a known rapist, even if it comes from someone who says on day one they're deporting every Hispanic individual in this country, not deciphering whether or not they're here legally or not. That's just a mass deportation. It's coming from an individual who day one is putting in place where he can become a dictator. Day one, it's coming from a place where from a campaign where the campaign said that Hitler did some good things. It's coming from a place where January 6th has some good people there beating up the police and killing people. It was good people in Charlottesville, right? All of this comes from a place where the experts are making an intelligent observation when they say he's not fit for office. It's not off the cuff. It's not off the top of their head. It's because of the resume that he has left behind that they had the privy to see firsthand. And now my brother Martin was not in the room to speak to him face to face, but they were. They're the ones that were curbing some of the asinine ideas that he had. This is the same man that looked at the doctor in a press conference and said, we can inject bleach in our veins to get rid of COVID. Now,
well, y'all walking heavy now. Y'all got your bets
give the nuclear codes to? Does that sound like a rational individual who can go on behalf of the country into NATO and lead other countries? That's what we want to do. We want to be leaders of the free world. We want to lead. Is this the man that you actually want to go in and talk for you? So it's more than I think it's more than just a name. We got to look past the name. We have to look at the resume, and the resume agrees with the experts that were there with him when they said that he's unfit for office. And I think America should listen.
Wow. Well said, everybody. Well said. Let's see what he has to say.
They call me a threat to democracy, right? She's a threat to democracy because she shouldn't even be the candidate. They should have picked a candidate fairly, not just given her because they want to be politically correct. I mean, whether you like him or not, you know, we had the debate, and his numbers went down. He didn't have a good night, but that can happen. But, you know, that happens, and the numbers go down, and they went down, and they went into him. They said, we're not going to let you run. We're going to take it away. That's crazy. Nancy went in. Chuck Schumer went in. Some of the people went in. They took it away from him. They just took it away from him. It's bad. And that is a threat to democracy if you think about it, right? That's a real threat to democracy. But you have to tell Kamala Harris And by the way, I think he would have, let's see what happens, and I may be wrong, but let's see what happens. I think he might have done better than she's going to do.
All right, your reflections on, I'm going to start with, this time we're going to start with, sorry to come behind that. We're going to start with Martin this time.
Oh, you gotta come for me first now. Wow.
I'm trying to move it around, circulate it. We're going to go from Martin to Lorenzo, from Lorenzo to Myron, from Myron to Chris to finish it off. Come on, Martin, talk to us. You all
Okay.
let me just give you your flowers thus far. You're brilliant, you're eloquent, you're clear, you're concise, all of you. I'm thoroughly enjoying this, and so is our audience. They're all into it. And after we do this, we're going to get some final statements from everybody. We're going to wrap it up. Go ahead, Martin.
One thing that, again, I still want to go back to, first I'm going to start with something that former President Trump said. Is, yes, there was that discussion back in July where some of the higher level Democrats thought that after that first debate where basically, let's call it like it is, that President Biden looked near death. Any student of political history will remember back in 1960. In 1960, Richard Nixon was the vice president of the United States at that time and was leading in every major poll against the Democrat nominee, John F. Kennedy, until they had a televised debate. And Richard Nixon had some surgery prior to that debate. And he came into that debate and looked like death warmed over. And his numbers shot down. They sank like a stone in the water. Joe Biden had the same situation. And some of the Democratic potentates said, wait a second, this ain't good. This ain't good at all. And they said something needs to happen. And I don't want to seem like a conspiracy theorist here, but I'm thinking like George used to say, the fix was in at that point. The fix was in that they had to find a way to get rid of him. And in my opinion, I believe that it personally would have been better for him to have not run for re-election in the first part. Had he opened up the nominating process and it had Kamala Harris won on outright, kudos to her. But I also look at it this way. She had every right to seek that nomination the minute that he said he didn't want to again, because she was part of the ticket anyway. So as virtue of that, we can call it hierarchy. We can call it that she inherited it, whatever you want to. I am not going to question her ability to run, because the Constitution says only one thing. It says two things of how you can run for president: being 35 years of age or older, and being a native-born citizen of the United States. Those are the only two things. It doesn't say that. It says nothing about whether you have a felony. It has nothing about if you have to live in a certain state. It says nothing about any of those things. Those are the only two prerequisites to run for the presidency. With that being said, again, this is the situation that we've created. We have brought ourselves to this precipice where for lack of a better, instead of seeking the best of the best to run for these offices, sometimes we're getting the best of what's left. That's not a good look.
Okay. Who's that? I think Lorenzo was next, right?
I'm real simple, team. He's the constant victim, man. First of all, when you're in a fight and somebody whoops your butt, you run across the street and you start calling names because you're at a distance, right? So he's running to different parts of the country and calling Kamala Harris this and that and speaking with his mouth. How can he control, or how can he even think that he can control how the Democratic Party chooses whomever they choose? Now, Martin, I'm gonna go this far. Nikki Haley said in her main role when she was running that whichever party got rid of the old guy would win. Did she not say that?
She did.
So come on,
You
guys.
did say that.
Are you all not going to look at the fact that the Democratic Party was just smart enough to hear the advice? Once again, another who said, if you want to win, here's the formula. So, I don't care about all his whining and complaining. And, he wish he was running against Joe. And, hell, if you fight Mike Tyson, you're probably going to lose. And right now he's up against Tyson and he's making all the excuses before the punch is thrown. That's all I see. So I'm sorry. I don't have a whole bunch of sympathy for somebody whining and crying. Play the political game, play it till the end. If you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. But quit crying about it along the way. That's all I got to say about it.
Excellent. Myron.
I agree. But also, I think he's not. We have to be careful here, right? We have to be careful because again, Donald Trump's resume speaks for itself. A quote that he had was that there's vengeance in his heart. It's on his mind. Day one, he is locking up everybody that opposed him. Day one. That's not rhetoric. That's not a Harris campaign misinformation. That is a quote from the candidate himself. It is known, and he has made it known, that he is all for eliminating the Constitution that my brother Baker so eloquently talked about. Once Trump hits office, the plan is to get rid of that. There won't be any more democracy because we will be a dictatorship. That is his known plan. That's not hypothetical. We're not guessing, and we're not making it up. He has made it known that that is his plan. So, is he fit? Should he be there? I must say, you again, you make your own decisions. But it's incumbent upon each one of us, if we're going to talk about starting from grassroots, that it's on us to put people in position to work for us. Then we have to put it all out on the line. And Biden stepping down, I agree with Lorenzo. That was the smartest move that they could have made, because he was not going to win. And I think pivoting is really overlooked. All they did was they pivoted. You were losing the game, and if you're a coach or you're a sports fan of any kind, you admire when the other team makes adjustments. Like I'm a fool if my opponent is scoring every time they get the ball, and I make no adjustments because of my pride and what I put into place. They were losing. The polls were dropping. His popularity was dwindling. And so they pivoted. They made adjustments. And now everything is on the turn now. I would like to hear, talking about Vice President, I would like to hear more of her immigration policy. I would like to hear what she has to say more about that. Be more specific. Give me a plan. But I'm going to tell you, that clip that you just played, I still didn't hear any comprehensive plan of what he has. It's the playbook as usual. We stand across the street and we dog out our opponents so that ultimately you're distracted by what I have to say about them, that you won't ask me what my real plan is for this country moving forward. It's been the plan since his first presidency, and it has not changed in all these years now leading into this. Someone please nail him down to a chair and make him give you a comprehensive plan on immigration other than Kamala's a horrible person. The Harris campaign is incompetent and Biden is old. We need more than that. What has he actually told you in this entire plan, in a rally, in the debate? And Biden looked bad. But Trump never gave you a comprehensive plan on what he would do. At least we know what one side intends to do, rather than having to look back at the resume to figure out what the other side is going to do.
Wow. If you just came on with
wisely.
If you just come on, we're discussing politics beyond belief. These gentlemen have done a superb job in giving us different perspectives on the current election cycle and the candidates and some of their platforms and agendas that they're running on. Chris is going to finish up, and I got 2 hot things, and we're going to be done. People is hanging with us, fellas. They're hanging with us. The numbers keep staying consistently. Folks jumping off, coming on, jumping off, coming on. They're enjoying what you guys are saying. Chris, finish up with this thought, and then these next 2, I'm gonna just put it in your head now. I want you to make a statement to church and religious folk, and I'm gonna preface my question, and black folks before we get done. All right, we go deal with religious folk and black folks. Chris, finish up the thought on what we were just discussing.
So it kind of to continue Myron's train of thought. You said that he has not given us his plan, and in a way, he has given us his plan. Not an economic plan, not a healthcare plan, not an immigration plan, not a criminal justice reform plan, not a housing market plan, not a whatever other plan that we actually need. But he has specifically said that I will be your retribution. And these people, and it goes back to what Terrell had thrown into the chat earlier, that that these people are reflections of us. Donald Trump, I really believe, is this avatar for our human primitive nature. All of those instinctual things that cause us to fear the unknown, or to distrust something that we don't fully understand, or to maybe not even do full research to get a full understanding of certain concepts that are floating around out here. And this man has literally said that he loves uninformed people. He loves the poorly educated. Why does he love the poorly educated? Because he knows he can just spoon feed them all of the lies and BS that he wants to spoon feed them in order to accomplish his agenda. Whereas you have the Harris campaign that has come along and says, look, we're not going back to where, men and more specifically white men get to do the thinking for us and get to tell us what's acceptable, what our morals are and what our morals are not going to be. This man is nothing but a manifestation of people's and I'll say certain people's frustration and anger from the 8 years that we spent having a black president. And I just wish some of them would just admit that. I wish they would just admit that that's the reason why we like Trump, because we don't ever want another black president. And because he comes in and feeds into that. It would have been different if he would have come into office and said, wait, especially during the whole Black Lives Matters movement. It would have been wonderful if he would have come in and said, hey, guys, the police brutality against black people, it's got to stop. It's got, all of that. It would have been wonderful if he would have come out and said something like that. But this man has been divisive from the very beginning, and he's never had a plan to unite this country. When he talks about America, he's not talking about the people that look like me and you, my grandmothers, our 104 great grandmother that we share. He's not talking about those kind of people. He's talking about the people that look like him, that float in his echelons, that are in his circles, who, if if he scratches their back, they can scratch his back, and they can cut a corner here and get wealthy and filthy rich from this, that, and the other. He has no plan to help the country altogether. His plan is only to help himself. And I don't, it just baffles me. People keep saying, well, where are Kamala Harris's policies? She's put her policies out there. She's trying to give tax credits to business owners, which is going to help to small business owners, which ultimately helps our economy. With his whole tariff plan, it's like, okay, well, if those companies want to come over here to America and make their product and this and that and the other, then everything will be fine. But not realizing why create the space for other countries, as much as we say we don't want to be in other countries' business and this and that and other, why create this space for other countries to come in like Josh Hawley does in Missouri and sells our land to China so that they can do what they want to do? Why, instead of following Kamala Harris's plan to put that money, that investment back into American people, into the hands of, as she has stated, Black men who don't have the easy access to capital that our white counterparts have, why not support something like that is going to ultimately help bring jobs back to our communities, that's going to help start building generational wealth, things of that nature? It's the man has given, again, to the point, nothing to make me say, oh, you know what, maybe I'll reconsider this policy. No, nothing at all. So yeah, the guy can't do anything for me.
So my next question for the panel is two, and we're going to be done. By some people on both sides of the aisle, Kamala Harris is dubbed as anointed, and Donald Trump, by many evangelicals, is also dubbed as being anointed, chosen by God. Can the panel please help the religious community out? Is it necessary to have a candidate that's like Jesus in the White House to have effectively? Why are people looking for Jesus in candidates? I want to understand this, because we seem to find in every election cycle on both sides of the aisle, there's a group that's extending their hands to anoint somebody in the name of God. And Trump has carried this thing from the first term to the next one. Please help some religious folk who are watching to find a system, find a more accurate plan or more balanced plan in selecting their leaders. Help somebody out there who's watching who thinks that Jesus got to be in the White House. And my last statement about that is, and we're going to start with Myron on this one. My last statement is, he's never been in the White House, and he never will. I don't care what y'all say. We're going to start with Myron. Y'all expecting these people to have the same moral values, the same spiritual system, and if they don't, they ain't no good to you. They're damnable. They're all this other kind of stuff. They're heathens. They're evil. Now, it's on both sides of the aisle, but especially this conservative base. So we're going to go from Myron to Martin to Chris and then to Lorenzo. And then we're going to talk to black people. We talk to everybody. We got to admit, we talk to everybody, but we're going to finish up with African Americans, or people of African descent, I should say, and minorities. Come on, Myron.
So,
Reverend Dr. Myron Fletcher.
This has been fabulous, man. This has been great. I really have enjoyed myself, and it's good to see everybody on here. I think that it's not just on Sundays that the country is most divided. It's around this time of the year that the country is just as divided. Our Anglo-Saxon brethren that are of the cloth have a different agenda when it comes to who they will endorse, even from our African American clergy. based on not just religious belief, but economics. It's based on healthcare, and that alone will splinter us, right? But also, I agree. Jesus has a kingdom, and it has a system, and it looks nothing like what we are made to vote for, right? It has never been in the White House. I agree. It has never, nor will it ever be, because it is, for one, Christ was just different. He was just that, the Messiah. Without getting theological or religious, there will never be a Christ in the White House because everyone has an agenda. Everyone is trying to get there, from Vice President Harris to Donald Trump to everyone in between that lost the nomination, Republican and Democrat. They all had an agenda, the reason they were trying to get to that White House. And not all of it is righteous. So you give and you take, right? The problem with it, with my brothers in Christ down in Kentucky and Tennessee, around the northern parts of Georgia and Florida, is that their culture and their view and what they want is different than ours. And no, just because a candidate wants to give LGBTQ rights, the right to live safe, that's what I want as a black man. The right to not be discriminated against when I go and try and get a job is what I want as a black man. Those are common rights that everyone should get. And because they're LGBTQ, or because they someone wants they want everyone to have the ability to have an abortion, which a whole lot of more comes with that, besides just people going and aborting babies. That is a very narrow view, even from a clergy. There has to be a wider view of the good of the people in order for you to elect a candidate that's holistically ready to take office. And it's more than just abortion. Everybody is not out there running to get abortions every week. Everybody is not getting an abortion, leaving and coming back in 2 months. Statistics show that that repeat offenders are minuscule. That number is very minuscule. So it's being blown up. The narrative is being spewed out that that's happening daily. But what is happening daily is people needing IVF to start families. That's happening. People need that. But because he's for the right of a woman to have an abortion, that we throw the baby out with the bathwater, it's asinine. And my evangelical brothers are looking for Jesus. But I believe, this is just my belief, that it's more than that. I don't believe that it's just abortion. I believe that there is a greater agenda that they have for their congregation and for their own lifestyles, whose congregations are not built like ours. They're not built. When you go to Joel Osteen's church, or you go to some of these other churches, they're not like what we're used to. The backwoods, everyone has to take an offering. You're one Sunday offering away from losing lights. That's not them. Who can ask their congregation about them a $65 million jet, right? And so it's different. They are doing it for tax benefits. They are doing it. They want Trump in office for the money, the economics. They want him in office for racial reasons. They want him in office because of what he benefits to them, and that excludes their brethren on the other aisle, which is the African-American community. The churches are demographically different in my Anglo-Saxon churches, as is with ours. You go to where you're comfortable, but because of that, the narrative is different. The rhetoric is different. And my Anglo-Saxon brothers, they are voting for Trump. They want Trump, not just solely on one particular viewpoint of the Harris campaign, but I believe that it goes deeper than that, and it's also hinged on racism and economics. And for that, Harris, or a black candidate, or even a candidate that offers those benefits to black people, will never be voted for.
All right, let's see. I had Chris next right in there, Martin.
So, you know, you will know a tree by the fruit that it bears. And I think that if Trump had been alive when Jesus first came on the scene, I think Trump is exactly who they expected. They wanted someone who was going to come in and take charge and, stick it to the Romans and, kind of come in and have this brutal and aggressive way of, ending this oppression, which they were actually living oppressed. These people today are not, but this oppression that they were living under. And when Jesus finally did come on the scene, they didn't recognize him at all, and they didn't accept him because he didn't come the way that they thought that he should come. Well, their version of this Jesus, which it's arguable, but some of our Caucasian brothers and sisters have a totally different, I would say, gospel than what we preach, because there's no way that you can sit here and say that, oh, I'm against abortion and I don't believe you should be killing life, but yet you will not put people in office or get behind legislation that calls for better gun reform laws because you think someone's trying to take away your Second Amendment right, when that's not the case at all. We're just trying to make sure that people who don't need guns, or people who don't need guns cannot access weapons, and especially weapons of mass destruction. So the facade that these people use, again, as a way to just mask their true feelings. And the whole abortion issue, there is a greater issue behind that. And for again, for them to use my Lord and Savior Jesus as a cover up for, oh, this is our righteous and moral stance. But there's been this underlying conversation that we heard about in Charlottesville, North Carolina, about this whole great replacement theory. So in their minds, they're thinking that if we could control reproductive rights, not you, I mean, and then have to understand that these reproductive or the taking away of these reproductive freedoms, they're having the most negative impact on women of color. So not only are they trying to increase their own population, but then they're trying to decrease another population at the same time by controlling these decisions that women should be able to make between them and their doctors. So to, again, stamp the name of Jesus on that and say that this is my righteous cause and this is what makes my side so politically and morally right, it's not even how Christ would have wanted it done. We have free choice, we have free will, we wake up every day and have to choose to serve God, choose to seek God, things of that nature. So it does me no good to try and force my religious or my religious values or my faith on you when you haven't even been introduced to it, or this is just not what you want. That's why we have freedom of religion, and that freedom of religion means that my own personal choices and decisions don't have to be burdened by what your Bible, your spiritual manuscript, your guru, your whoever says is acceptable. And it's sad to see, and so many Christians who have fallen into this because it's the only, again, morally, in their mind anyway, morally justifiable thing that makes up for all of the flaws and issues that they refuse to admit about Donald Trump.
Okay. Come on, Martin.
I'm sitting here and I think back to this past Sunday. At my church, our primary, which is our children's group, did a presentation. And one of the songs that the children sang said, "I'm trying to be like Jesus." Didn't say I'm trying to be like the president. I'm trying to be like my congressman. I'm trying to be like my mayor. I'm trying to be like my savior. And you said it correct, AG, when you said that Jesus is not in the White House. Jesus doesn't care about who's going to be in the White House. The person that comes into the White House needs to carry the charge of the Savior with them, whomever it is. This is where we get it all mixed up. And I can look back to the days where they referred to the GOP as God's own party. I took serious umbrage with that because of the fact that I knew some wonderful people who were Democrats. I knew some wonderful people that were Republicans. I knew some wonderful people who were Libertarians, Green Party members. God is not exclusive to any party. And when we stop saying that, we'll be so much further ahead. When I ran for office, I would have members of my faith who would pray with me as to whether or not I should make this step. And that wasn't because of the fact that I'm saying, okay, Lord, give me a victory here. Because Lorenzo got so many calls about that I'm losing again. So he knows how. So apparently God didn't like me because I didn't win elections, if I had to take it from that standpoint. But I didn't. To me, the whole political discussion of who's more righteous as a candidate is irrelevant. We could say that God is with Trump more than he is with Harris, or he's with Harris more than he is with Trump. That is all in the eyes of whom is looking through that spectrum. If it's a Republican, obviously they're going to say that the Lord is with Trump. If it's a Democrat, they're going to say the Lord is with Harris. But in the end result, God abides with every single one of us according to the abundance of how we choose to embrace them, how we choose to resonate his love, his spirit, let's just get down to it. We have a Savior that came to this world to atone for the sins of this world. And yes, that even accounts for the sins of Donald Trump, the sins of Kamala Harris, the sins of Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, George W. Name them. Our Savior atoned for their sins. Did that make them perfect? No. But we are perfected through that atonement. So but here is the dynamic that it all comes down to. Is that when we try to project the Savior overriding the human imperfections that we have, that's where we make those problems at. And that's kind of scary because of the fact that, no, we're not going to have a perfect president, no matter whom it is. And we have to accept that because of the human because of the human imperfection, because of the fact that when we were on this earth, we were endowed with the gift of agency to make choices and to learn and grow as a result of those choices. And we are all blessed because of that. We are also blessed with that agency to use that to make a choice. And I always used to tell people this, is that there's nothing wrong, regardless of what you believe and who you believe it through, of praying for people who don't agree with the same thing. When I was in primary elections, I would also pray for my opponents. I did that not because of the fact that I'm saying, Lord, silence their voices days before the election so that the only voice that the people are hearing is mine. I'm praying for the Lord's will in all things. That doesn't make me perfect. That just means that I am looking at the grander picture of it all. And the grander picture, and we all agree on this, is that there's only one throne that we need to worry about, and that's the throne that the Lord sits upon with the Savior at his right hand. And that's the only election that I'm going to be worried about in the grand scheme of it all. When we look at things and we stop trying to look for a perfect candidate, when we stop trying to say that this candidate sins more than this one, and we start saying we're going to hold them accountable regardless of that fact, that's where we can have some real true progress. And the church does need to take a greater role beyond, as Myron said, it does need to take a greater role beyond just abortion, just upon same-sex rights. It used to be in the old days, yes, my age is showing and I'm okay with that, is that the center of a neighborhood, a community, was what? Was the church. You didn't go to the mayor first when you had a problem. You went to your pastor. You went to the deacon of the church. You went to your bishop. You went to whomever. Because the church was the first point outside of your family that you went to, because that was your extended family. When we do things like that, instead of trying to say that the government has to be the first answer and the only answer, because it's not. But then here's our greater problem is that when we try to force our moral worldview onto government, then the government feels it's their responsibility to do so. And I've said this before, and I will continue to say this, is that there is no way ever that you can legislate equality or morality. You can't. It cannot be done.
Let's get Lorenzo in here, and then we're going to do this one last thing. We'll be done. Well said, Martin. Come on, bro.
So Lorenzo is going to be quick. I think we beat this dead horse to death. The only thing I have to say is I believe there's this book called the Bible, and it says, and Christ said, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's. And I'm going to leave it alone from there, brothers.
And unto God what's God's. That's what it says. And I'm going to drop my statement on this before we move on to the last topic. And that is, there's the deception and the hoodwink that creates a strong delusion of sorts among people of religion is that they don't recognize that it's all highly subjective. It's all highly subjective. It lends itself to subjectivity to the point that you can't see that if you represent morality, it's got to be a broad morality. It can't be selective morality, and it can't be selective situational ethics in terms of your morality. So your moral base only kicks in as it relates to abortion and same-sex marriage, but your morality or your spirituality is lacking when it comes down to the oppression and the subjugation of a people who are of a different hue or skin color. And all these things that are systemic, interwoven into the fabric of a nation to oppress or to keep a people down. You will acknowledge it in certain situations, but for you, there isn't a strong impetus, or you're not motivated to see it as a highly immoral thing to watch a people struggle for 400 or 500 years and then want to get involved to do something about it, because to you, it's either unimportant or it's on the lower echelon or spectrum of your moral base or your morality in general. That's why I say it's highly subjective, because it's kind of like this. It's kind of like the law. If you want to start talking about morality, if you can't keep all of it, then you can't keep none of it. If you're guilty in one, then you're guilty in all. And so there's a group or a segment in our religious community who doesn't see that. And again, it goes back to what Myron said. It's because that demographic of people only resonates with things that they are familiar with culturally, and that's a part of their orbit. That's a part of their world, period. So I'm glad you all made these statements on that, because nobody will ever be perfect. Vote your conscience, but don't expect people to be Yeshua. Don't expect people to be God in the White House. It's just not going to happen. And stop fabricating and conjuring up or deifying people who are so far off the pathway spiritually and morally, trying to make them God's choice. In my opinion, it's a demonic choice. It's a choice that you are saying is God. Again, and it is subjective, based on what's important to you in your spiritual and moral base. I'm gonna leave it at that. My last question to you fellas is, and we've been equitable. We've tried to be fair here. We've addressed all ethnicities, but we're dealing with a large audience, and we appreciate everybody from the various ethnicities who are represented on the stream tonight. Thank you for your love and support. And I'm gonna end it with this. I want the fellas, and I'm gonna leave my brother Lorenzo as last because he's a Black nationalist on this panel. I'm gonna start with Chris, Martin, Myron, and then end up with Lorenzo. What do Black people need to consider before they go to the polls? What do Black people need to be thinking about in terms of issues that are relevant to them and has everything to do in terms of the potentiality to impact their present, their future, and of course, generations behind them, based on these candidates and based on this election cycle? Who did I say we started with? Chris, then Martin, Myron, and we're going to end up with Lorenzo.
So Black people really need to be mindful of Project 2025 and all of the things that they have planned that are going to affect us first. You have some people, I guess they think that because they support Trump, that they're going to be safe, from whatever wrath he may bring back to the White House. And that's not the case. Just like he did with everybody that he was surrounded by, he's going to throw everybody under the bus. And I think, that's really what we need to be concerned about, is the fact that if they're starting with taking away reproductive freedoms, just imagine all of the other freedoms that they're going to continue to try and chip away at. This Project 2025 is trying to go back to the original Constitution, that only white men can be landowners and have access to capital, yada, yada, yada. That's essentially what they are trying to do, is take us back to that time where power is centered around white men in America, and the rest of us just have to take the crumbs and live off of everybody else's, good graces. I think Black people also need to be concerned about our future as it pertains to the economy. And when I say the economy, I mean our opportunities to participate in the economy, especially in the job market. One of the big things that's floating around about Kamala Harris is that she's a DEI hire, and if everything wasn't about DEI, then you guys could have had a better pick. And as much as these people would want to argue that that DEI is not about race, I'm actually going to agree that DEI is about race, because if it weren't about race, then you wouldn't need certain laws in place to make sure that people aren't putting giant capital letter C's on people's apartment applications, and making sure that they don't get access to livable and affordable homes because you don't like the color of their skin, or because you don't like their sexual orientation, or because you don't like their freedom. Literally, they're trying to roll back time to before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That's part of the reason why and how Black people have been able to even get to come as far as we have, because now you have these systems in place that says, hey, we have a way to measure now if you're discriminating against people because of the color of their skin or because of their national origin, things of that nature. And I understand that there's a way to fix things, but at the same time, we as Black people need to really bear down on this and realize that it's our future at risk also, for sure.
Wonderful, Chris. Come on, Martin.
Well, first, as a side note, to my friend Myron, before I say any comments, all I'm going to say is that instead of worrying about the polls, he needs to worry about when I come see him, because GB3 will be avenged. That's all I'm going to say on that matter. There will be an answer for that, sir.
Okay.
Now, if I may get into just the simplest of thoughts, is that I will say this, and as I've said, as an unashamed person of color who is a constitutional conservative, I will say this. Simply put, we've all said it before. Vote your conscience. Take a lot of things out of the equation. Dismiss the thought of let's make history and have the first Black woman in office. Take all of that. If that's your only purpose for voting for someone, then perhaps you might just want to look down the ballot. And that's not me saying, if you're just doing it for a historical purpose, don't. Do it with the premise of believing that your vote is an affirmation that Kamala Harris can do the job. If you're a person that's white and you say, I vote for Donald Trump because I want to make white America great again, go away. Because again, vote for you. Vote for someone you think that best represents you. If you feel that's Trump, vote for Trump. If you feel that is Harris, vote for Harris. But look at the picture beyond the next 4 years. Look at the America that's going to be handed to your children or to your grandchildren, to generations from far beyond this. Because what we are looking at right now is, we say it every 4 years, that this is the most important election today. Because it is. It is the most important election because it's the next one. And then 4 years from now, we'll say it again, that it is the most important election. And we do need to not just look beyond the presidency. Look at who you are sending to the House of Representatives, who you are sending to the U.S. Senate, who you're sending to your governor's mansion, who you're sending to your state legislatures. Here in Missouri right now, we have majorities. The Republican Party has the majority in the state legislature and in the governor's mansion. Has that benefited Missouri totally? Absolutely not. There are many things that I disagreed with the views of the Republican Party having this majority that you could have done for the benefit of things. I look at when I lived years in Kansas City. Thank you for that, Mr. Ware, for that. And then I spent the last 10 years living in St. Louis. And I looked at these neighborhoods that, as a child, I used to look in and I used to see all these businesses that were thriving, these communities that were pretty much self-sustaining. But through government overreach, government inclusion, government policies, bad policies, that turn these neighborhoods into wastelands. And not one candidate is going to change all of that in 4 years. It's not going to happen. Let's look at this from the grandest stage that we can. Is that change is going to come, but sometimes the change is going to take longer than we expect. Do not expect that if Kamala Harris becomes president on January 21st, that instantly Black America is suddenly going to be affluent, is suddenly going to be uplifted, because it's not going to happen. Conversely, if Donald Trump is reelected as president, Black America is suddenly not going to revert back to slavery, because it's not going to happen. Because I still believe in what Thomas Jefferson said, that the change of the Constitution will bind down any executive who attempts to try to overreach through the checks and balances of that. I hold faith in that. I hold faith in the fact that we as a community, whether it's black, white, green, whomever it is that we need to hold people accountable more. That's what I say. Hold accountable your vote. Hold your vote as sacred because it's yours. Too many people shed blood, prayed for you to have that right to vote, to just throw it away and discount it on simple things. Vote for you, not for a candidate.
Wonderful. Myron.
I totally agree. You vote for you. But in order to do that, you cannot defeat what you cannot define. And so we have to research. You have to define who it is that you're voting for. You have to see what the resume says. And so I encourage my brothers and sisters that are within my milieu, my orbit, my area, that we look at the economy. How are you living? So the doctor, I had to have hip surgery, and my hip was hurting so bad that I couldn't hardly walk. I would take 2 steps, it would be bone on bone, my whole leg would just collapse. And I went to one specialist, and he said, nope, I'm not working on your hip. I'm not replacing your hip because you're too young. Come back in 10 years, and I'll work on it. I went and got a second opinion, and the first thing the doctor asked me was, what's your quality of life? What do you want your quality of life to be? And I explained to him what I needed done and why I needed it and the plans that I have. And he ended the conversation with, I'll do it. I say that same thing to Black America. What do you need for your quality of life to be what you need it to be? Do your research. Find out who has the resources, not just the resources, wrong word. Who has the consciousness to pay attention to your quality of life? It is then and only then that we, not just as a people, but as a country, are going to thrive and head in the right direction. Black people, we need to pay attention to who has your best interest in the economy. Pay attention. Do your research. Who has your best interest when it comes to gun reform? Who has your best interest when it comes to protecting your civil rights? Who has the best interest, your best interest, when it comes to education? And we're not just look beyond you. Look at your kids and your grandkids. It breaks my heart when I saw that all of these millionaire rappers are wrapping their arms around Donald Trump, who explicitly said that he cares nothing about them. In a campaign, he said, I don't care about you, but vote for me. We have to do our research. We have to make sure that whoever you put in office has your quality of life in their conscience. Otherwise, you are doing not just you, but your neighbor a disservice. Vote your conscience, but also do your research so you can define and then defeat.
Wonderful. And we end up here with Lorenzo.
Well said. Well said. They've all been great points. There's very little for me to say except for I agree. Vote for you, but by you I mean your neighborhood, where you come from. I am a Black nationalist, and this is something I want to get across to people more than anything. Whether your candidate wins or loses in this election, what happens on November 6th? Do we quit? Do we go back home and say, well, we won, we lost? Or do we keep fighting for our community? One candidate is trying to give us some middle income housing, right? The other one doesn't care. But if Mr. Trump happens to win on November 6th, you can bet I'm going to be up at the Missouri State Capitol talking to my congressperson to find out how can I get some economic stimulus in my Black communities. If Kamala Harris wins, I'm still going to go up there and say, thank you, my sister, but what are you going to do to help my community in Sunset in Sykeston, Missouri? We can't simply do a vote and go home, because that's where all this rhetoric seems to be heading to. You know, I like when Obama says, don't boo, vote. But my question is, what do you do the day after you vote? People in my community, keep following up with them. Don't get stagnant and sit back and watch your people go up there and get bought out by the big money, because believe you me, the big money is already paying for their time. We have to go up there as a people on a continuous basis and ask for things to be done in our communities and in our homes so we can progress as a people over the years for our children, for our grandchildren, for our great-grandchildren. So my question when I end this whole discussion tonight is, what will we do as a Black community on November 6th, the day after the vote's cast? That ends my discussion.
Very, very powerful. Very powerful. Thank you, gentlemen. I want you right now in the comment section and with likes and hearts to show your love and appreciation by celebrating this panel. Job well done. Come on, clap for yourselves or clap for the person next to you, fellas. Awesome, awesome job. Come on, look at the likes and hearts. I want to see some things in the comments. You're getting all kinds of love here. Thank you all. Very well stated, very well said. I'm going to give myself the last word here in a minute. If you want to donate, use the information at the bottom of the screen. I do ministry typically on these nights, spiritual awakening. For those who want to, fine. For those who want, it's all right. This is free, and this was shared with you in love. Look at all the comments here. People loved the conversation tonight. You all did an incredible job, very well informed, eloquent, articulate. You had great perception and perspectives as it relates to the discussion and the topics. And I'm saying to those who are watching, even if you need to go back and replay, look at the likes and hearts, they're still coming in. If you need to go back and replay and watch this again to help you cultivate, shape, and develop your conscience and help you come to a decision, then do it. There were some very powerful yet poignant things also that was said here tonight as it relates to the issues and as it relates to the candidates. So I thank y'all for hanging in with me. People were coming and going. And I know cumulatively there have been over hundreds who've watched, coming in and out, in and out, in and out. The likes and hearts are still coming, fellas. And they're celebrating you and for dedicating your time. And I will definitely do this again. And listen, I'm going to leave you with a quote today, which to me is from one of the most legendary presidents that we've ever had in this nation. And I think it summarizes, in particular, some of the philosophical disposition that was shared tonight in various different ways. John F. Kennedy said, "The ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of all." End quote. You and I have to become informed voters, because not being informed doesn't just impact you. It's going to impact millions of people. This session tonight was so you wouldn't have to Google. This session tonight was so you wouldn't have to watch 10 or 15 channels. You can hear from the perspective of these educated gentlemen tonight who shared from different angles, but yet gave you and I a tremendous amount of information to process and to consider. And so, gentlemen, I want to thank you, Chris. I want to thank you, Martin. I want to thank you, Myron. I want to thank you, Lorenzo. Y'all brothers know I love you dearly. We will have to do this again, and we'll have to bring more people into this discussion from different walks of life. I love it. This has been a success, and I'm going to release everybody who's watching me tonight. I was going to accept some questions, but we've already been on here for quite a while. And so thank you again, fellas, for hanging in with me. It's been 2 hours and 40 minutes. We were only going to do an hour and a half. Lorenzo came in from off the road, switched and got on his laptop. And you all hung in there with me together. And so I truly, truly appreciate you. You know, I got nothing but love for y'all. And again, I'm going to release you as I always do with the shalom blessing, shalom, shalom, peace, wholeness and prosperity, nothing missing and nothing broken. And the last word I say unto you is, if you are registered, vote. If you can, vote and try and make your vote count. And if you're not, influence somebody else who is to vote and to vote their conscience. Love you. See you all real soon. Appreciate you, fellas. Have a great one. We're in the stream. We could still be in the backstage.